when people do remakes of stories, this is an area they often really screw up. For example, take a look at the movie Scrooged. Remember that. If you've ever seen it with Bill Murray, it's supposed to be the remake of A Christmas Carol. In the original Christmas Carol, we have a bunch of people who are very needy. The two children, after all, are called Ignorance and Want. And it's Scrooge's inability to be generous that causes the problem. Whereas, with Bill Murray in Scrooged, it's his proactive cruelty that causes the problem, not his inability to be generous. Now, what difference does that make? Well, you see, in the original Christmas Carol, Dickens recognized that he couldn't indict the British business community and say, hey, you guys, you're doing it all wrong. You have to, start being nicer to people and stop doing what you're doing. He couldn't have them do that because they wouldn't have bought it. But he could say, everything you're doing is fine. Run business the way you always run it. But add something. Add generosity. Give, because there are people who are needy. And that works. And so all of the arguments in that story, all of those arguments, they are, here's a need, here's a need, here's a need, and all these people are suffering because you will not give, not because of what you do wrong. Whereas in Scrooged, the argument should have been, here's a person who's hurt by what you did. Here's a person who's hurt by what you did. But they didn't actually do that. They still showed most of the arguments as being, here's a person in need, here's a person in need, here's a person in need. And Scrooged character, Bill Murray, had to change by no longer being a bad guy. The two arguments didn't match. The argument of the story didn't match what was needed by the character to do. Now, they could have simply had him be the same kind of character, or change the arguments and say, here's someone you've hurt, here's someone you've hurt, here's someone you've hurt. And if that happened, then the argument would have worked a little bit better in Scrooge. Great performances, some real interesting visuals, but it could have been a stronger argument.